I am Halli Casser-Jayne, and welcome to the Halli Casser-Jayne Show, where, along with my partner in politics, former White House correspondent Matthew Cooper, we slice and dice all things politics, and some days, Donald Trump, too. This week on the Halli Casser-Jayne Show, it's impeachment, full speed ahead. Are there any noble minds left in the Republican Party? Impeachment, NATO, election 2020, and for good measure, the Grinch who stole Christmas. And we're just beginning. Let's get started. Well, I hope you had a happy Thanksgiving. I hope you had lots of turkey and stuffing and everything else that you love. Was it good? Was it good for you?
It was good. I was thankful. It all went well. All good.
All good. I'm glad to hear it. Well, it was good for you. It was good for me. Not so sure how good it was for our current president of the United States, Mr. Trump, who has been facing some stuff, and it looks like it's getting more and more complicated and weird for him and for us and for the country. I hope all of this resolves itself. You know what I was thinking about when I'm going to start the show, Matt? That I was going to begin with this. I'm so depressed. I'm finding all of this just so utterly depressing. I can't tell you. It's like I'm like counting until the election is over, and maybe we'll be saved by that, because it's my opinion. I don't know that impeachment's going to save the country. But are you depressed?
Well, it's exhausting. It's exhausting. There's just, there's so much Trump news every day that it's exhausting.
It is, and there is like kind of like this horrible gray. It's like Snoopy, right? Didn't Snoopy who was the one character who had the big gray cloud over him all the time? I mean, it's like that, and it's like whoever I speak with, I don't care what side of the aisle, they're just going to roll their eyes with, "Are you kidding?" And I do think that's important to talk about before we get into to what happened yesterday and what's happened today, and that is this: the president of the United States sets like a tone for the country. You and I have lived long enough to go through so many presidents, and we know, what they do. And I don't care what anybody says. This guy has trashed the moral fiber, to be sure, but the joie de vivre that's so America. Gone, baby, gone. That's his legacy, among others. That's one of his legacies. Do you agree?
Yeah, I just think he's, well, it's a cliche at this point, but it's all cliches have truth in them. It's just the divisions in the country have gotten so much more deep that under him, and there's just a level of animus that, it's inconceivable to imagine, Barack Obama or George W. Bush tweeting that their Secretary of State was a moron. Things that are now forgotten and taken for granted as just part of daily life are.
You do realize that you and I are of an age that we have a perspective on what was. And you realize there's a whole generation now that has no clue?
Well, I don't know. You only have to think back, 3 years, 7 years to, presidents, for whatever their flaws, adhered to a certain sense of decorum that's gone now.
But if you're an 18-year-old kid and you're not, you have the right to vote, but you're not overly political, but you're now becoming a little bit more aware.
Well, that is true.
This is it. Anything after this is gravy. It's just that part of it makes me sad. So yesterday, here we are on this impeachment train. And the thing about it that I find so galling is never in our lifetime, and maybe in the history of the United States, has there been a better reason to impeach a president than this one, based on the facts that we have before us. And we have a reluctant Nancy Pelosi coming to this, and we have something going on that I think is to the Democrats' detriment, which is they want to. Jonathan Turley yesterday, one of the professors who spoke at the hearing. Let's slow this down. His reasons for slowing it down, I think, were different than mine. But I want to talk to you about that. I want to talk to you about the fact that they're rushing through this thing. And I don't think people have even digested what the hell is going on, because it changes so much from day to day. And I think it's because they are so worried about what happens, for the election, and that their senators won't be out on the campaign trail where they should be. They'll have to go to the Senate hearing. Even as Nancy this morning spoke, we are going ahead with drafting articles of impeachment. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I don't know how much, the country's paying attention, and whether it's really sinking in with people. I imagine there are a lot of people who feel that this part is impeachment, that it's confusing that this is the setup before impeachment, which is before a trial. I'm not sure everybody's, following it closely enough to make the distinctions. Would more time make a difference? I don't know. They got a lot of facts in hand already. If this was a big report that the Intelligence Committee came up with this week of 300 pages, and I'm not sure the investigators are necessarily going to turn up more. Until the Ukraine thing kind of fell on their lap, they were not getting a lot between the end of the Mueller episode and the Ukraine stuff. I'm not sure a lot more is going to come. Maybe it would, maybe it wouldn't. So I understand what you're saying. I'm just not.
Well, the other thing that I'm saying is, it looks to me like they're planning this because they figured that if they can have the hearings in January, it's after the Christmas thing, and people will, be hunkered down, getting a little downtime from the Christmas crazy. And on that score, I kind of agree. But I worry that a message is out there for the Democrats, which is, let's just rush through this thing, which kind of makes it that this isn't very important. What I'm saying? Yeah.
Well, you don't want to seem like you're rushing to the gallows. But
and how do you think she's handling it? I mean, how did you feel about yesterday with Turley and Pamela Karlan and the scholars sitting there? You and I are news junkies, but did it go over the head of all the other people in America? Like, what is this boring stuff? I thought it was brilliant.
Well, today, she announced that they're going to move ahead with articles. So there have been developments since then. Look, they set the stage. I think it was probably, on balance, a better day for Republicans.
Yeah,
it was a little like, evolution versus intelligent design. It looked like a legitimate debate on the surface between two opposing theories, like, it's impeachable. Maybe not. As long as that seems like a reasonable debate, I think it's good for Republicans. So, I don't think it's so much that it was boring to have the lawyers come in.
Not to us.
Not to us. I don't think most people paid attention to yesterday in particular.
And if they did, I think a lot of it went
the foreign leaders overseas laughing at Trump
was the story
probably registered a little more.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a second. Here's the thing. First of all, Jonathan Turley, who to me is you'll forgive me, he's a turdly. He always has been. And he's always kind of walked that line, whatever seems to his best advantage, I think. He's a little.
Let's not call him names, Hallie.
Can't help myself.
Let's do better than that.
We need a little humor here, sweetie.
He's a little unctuous.
Yeah, you think? Just a little.
For those of us who are really old, we remember him from the Clinton impeachment when he was,
obnoxious.
Had a whole more in sadness than anger tone about Clinton. Look, I guess there's, something to be said for what he argued, but not very compelling. He kept saying, they need to slow it down or they need more judicial rulings. Well, none of that's in the Constitution.
Can I interject one thing here? I thought one of the things he said was kind of weird, actually. You need to get the Supreme Court to, come down on whether these guys need to testify or not. Okay. So I'm saying to myself, you're saying that anybody who purposefully slows down the process by refusing to give their witnesses to testify can have the Supreme Court back them up by saying, we'll take it all the way to the Supreme Court. In other words, it's Bill. I mean, what is he? He knows better. I mean, the founders deliberately cut the court system out of this process. Right. I mean, they don't have a role in it. I mean, they do in the extent that they're, weighing in on various issues along the way, but they're not. There's nothing in the Constitution about the courts, and they didn't leave it to the courts to oust a president or consider his ouster. That was left the thing. They left it to Congress. So if he wants to make up new Turley standards, well, that's it. But that's fine. But the rest of us don't have to. We don't have to go by his new standards. But I think the thing that this is the kind of thing that the Dems just aren't quick on their feet, because they should have called him out on it immediately. And it would have been the perfect case to say this whole thing that's coming out of Turley is a sham. Well, each side questioned the run. I don't even think the Democrats questioned him that much. They just asked questions of the people they agreed with, which was fine. I mean, the Republicans were. I mean, this thing was relatively calm compared to the. Yeah, I was surprised, weren't you? Yeah, compared to the nut jobs and the other. Although I have to say a few things about Doug Collins, who does a very bad imitation of Jim Jordan. And every attempt he made to do it, he didn't do it very well. I'd love to talk about these dudes because I just find them just the cast of characters. I mean, Matt Gaetz. I mean, Louis Gohmert at the end saying, "Don't let your babies grow up to graduate from Harvard and Stanford." I mean, dumbing down of America by the Republicans. It used to be the parties kind of kept their crazies off camera as much as possible. They are the ones on camera now. That's all there are. And now they're kind of the ones who running the show, right? Well, they definitely get the most airtime, and they don't really. There's no restraining force on them. I mean, look, the parties are so united on this. It's very sad. But what do you think, Jerry? How did Jerry Nadler do? I started off with that first 5 minutes of the thing, going, "Oh God, here we go. He can't contain them." I thought he did fine. I mean, he contained them pretty well. They kept the thing moving along. It was. I thought he did fine. He's a sweet man, isn't he? He's a very sweet man. I mean, he. There was none of the. Yeah. I worked for Peter Adino when I was a kid, who was the chairman of the Judiciary Committee during Nixon, and he had a better affect that sort of suggested the gravity of the thing and the reluctance and the sadness of doing it. That was. Kind of better, but that was a different time. I thought Nadler did fine. Yeah, he was all right. I mean, it was okay, but he seems beloved, certainly by Nancy in some senses, and I know. Yeah, I think even though they disagree, I was going to say they disagree on stuff, so they gave him his due. That's back in the Mueller era, which feels like the Pleistocene. Remember that? At this point. God. Oh my God! All right, so let's just talk about something else that came out of that. A couple of things. One was one of the professors, Pamela Karlan. You can't not talk about this because this is such a. She made an analogy. She didn't go after Barron Trump, the president's 13-year-old son. She used the word Barron in terms of Barron. The name, and you can't say you're a Baron if your name is Barron. That was the bad joke that she made, and of course it didn't take 2 seconds, and everybody was out there. They even went to the First Lady's floor, where we now know from the new book on her that she doesn't sleep with the president, but has her own floor in the White House with her own bed, and she came out just at his bidding. Who knows whether she wrote it or not, going after, how dare you go after my son. And then 2 seconds later got a thing from Trump, give me money to protect my son, so to speak. Right. They're really good at op. They're really, and I got nothing from anybody else from the Democrats. Nothing. to me, that was a statement on why the Dems don't do well in this. And I think it's important. And now we have George Conway being the spokesperson for the Democrats. Not only on Twitter, but now he's being quoted in every news magazine all over the world. Well, George Conway said...
Well, yeah, I mean, he's... look, his position by virtue of being Kellyanne Conway's husband adds a whole twist to it. And he was, a big Republican. He is a big Republican lawyer, so it's got a lot of weight to it. And he's very aggressive about this. So it's just one more twist in a wild story.
Certainly a wild story. The other thing that I wanted to talk about here is as this is going on, and the reason for this whole story is that, Trump was trying to get Ukraine to help him win the next election. If that's, I think that's pretty factual at this point, even by his own admitting, or at least Mick Mulvaney's. Giuliani turns out that he's back in Ukraine. You can't make this stuff up.
Yeah, well, he's always hustling. I mean, he's always, any opportunity to make money. The story is he's there to produce a film that's going to clear Trump, and he's going to the same suspects that he went to in the first place to try and get them to help him, build the case for Trump. And something came up, and I wanted to ask you about this. There was talk that he may have also been in Budapest. Did you read that? I didn't, but I.
Okay, so they were saying, he's been, he's doing Eastern Europe, so he's going Budapest, Ukraine, maybe Prague, and I'm going to say this to you because here I go with a conspiracy theory, which is, you remember the whole thing that when everything blew up about the payoff to the bimbos, Trump's bimbos, that Michael Cohen, they said, what was he doing in Prague? He was seen in Prague, and then he said, I wasn't in Prague, but maybe he was in Prague, and if he wasn't in Prague, maybe he was in Budapest. This timing is exactly the same. So I just thought I'd throw that out there because it's Christmas.
Could be.
It's Christmas, right?
It's my weekly. Could be.
There you go. So, could be.
Can you add some music to that?
Yes, I'm going to start doing that. I think and maybe we're going to change the name to the show to Could Be. It could be. I'm telling you, this is crazy that he would be there. I mean, first of all, for the optics of it, but they don't care about any of that. I mean, that just goes over everybody's head. But there's a story. We're not done with that on many other levels. But here's the other thing I want to talk to you about, among the many that came out of that, and that is there was a change in how Trump is having his quote-unquote transcript, which was never a transcript, which wasn't even a readout, interpreted. I need a favor, though. We need a favor, though. You heard that, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk about that, because I think that's maybe the first time they've come up with something that may have serious legs. You want to take it? Right.
Well, we would suggest it's more of a national interest than I.
Right.
But I thought one of the lawyers made an interesting point yesterday, which is that Trump was really intent on an announcement of the investigation by the Ukrainians into Joe Biden and his son Hunter.
Right.
That if he really was concerned with corruption, he would just want an investigation, not really care whether it was publicly known or not. But the fact that he was insisting on a public announcement sort of revealed his true intention, that it was to discredit Biden, not to actually launch an investigation so much as to have the announcement of such, which I thought was quite a good point, because we know from Sondland how determined he was to, who was going to do the announcement in Ukraine, what they had to say, and I thought that was quite a good point.
Yeah, and now you're going to, I think we just zeroed in on how they're going to play this for story. I think that's it on that count. So I thought that was interesting. Now, the other thing that I thought was extraordinary, I'd love to hear yours. I can't wait to hear what you say on this one. And that is that when they put the report out, Adam Schiff, they released the phone records. with Devin Nunes and even his staffer Kash Patel, and -1. The Republicans are going wacko about that this morning. Absolutely crazy. This was illegal. Okay, it wasn't illegal, but it was wrong. And they published our phone numbers. And where did they get the right to do this? And I mean, they are trying to make hay out of this. I thought that was really something.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is the kind of hardball we're seeing, and I would think you've wanted the Democrats to take
Play
more
hardball.
Aggressive tone, so I would think you're
I'm thrilled.
You're happy with that. I mean, generally they redact the numbers and things like that, but it was a fairly bold step. But look, it's all part of the record.
And not only that, I think it's very incriminating. Hello.
Yeah, well, there's that too. I mean, look, the Nixon tapes were phone calls, and Oval Office recordings. So
if they put that in there, they've got more. They're not messing around, and they knew they had that and didn't bring it up. Prior to that,
right? It was kind of.
Yeah, I'm saying there's a more of a shoot a fit. That -1 thing is interesting too, isn't it? -1. He really is minus about 900 in his brain. But he made a tweet yesterday that gave away that he was -1, and I don't, he never means to do it when he does stupid stuff, but he does stupid stuff. I don't know if you saw his tweet, but it was like and something I don't remember. I wish I'd written it down, but. Go back and read my feed on Twitter, and their story is there. And so now, Trump is absolutely out of his bird about Adam Schiff, and he's now calling Adam Schiff deranged. Some psychiatrist said that that's projecting. It's like, okay, fine. But you got to give it to Adam Schiff. I mean, wow. Is all I have to say. He really should be in courts. I'd hire him in a heartbeat.
Well, he was a strong prosecutor.
Yeah, really, really extraordinary guy. So on that also is this Lev Parnas. Wow, what a cast of characters! How many times can you say that? You can't write this book. And he wants to testify. What are your thoughts there on this Russian connection? Which, by the way, connects down here in Miami because apparently Governor Ron DeSantis has quite a relationship with these two dudes, or had quite a relationship with these two dudes. He's trying to, divorce himself from. They were everywhere. Are they worth talking about?
Yeah, I mean, they're like the Kato Kalin of this thing. That's a reference to the O.J. Simpson case for those of you who were not sentient in the 1990s.
Yeah.
Look, I mean, they're ubiquitous, and more importantly, they seem to be flipping in the criminal cases. So it's an important role. We'll find out more.
So it goes from and before we get to it goes to, I do want to mention Hunter Biden, who is at the core of all of this. Poor guy, who now has got a illegitimate baby with a stripper. He's
married. I don't think he's illegitimate.
No. He's married. He had an affair.
He had an affair.
Oh, you didn't know about this?
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
The Arkansas.
Well, I don't know.
Or something. Whatever. Yeah, well, it's in court.
The number of millions and millions of children in this country,
Well, the only reason I bring it up.
At an accelerating rate are born outside of wedlock.
Well, the reason that I bring it up is this, and that is because it's a way to get to the financial records, and that's what they're fighting about in that courtroom.
Right.
And that does make a difference. But I want to bring up, Hunter, and then to take us to who it goes to the Senate. And, Trump is screaming, I can't wait to get it to the Senate so it's a fair trial, and we're going to get our people out there to do our, what's right. We'll get a voice finally and all that jazz. I can't wait. I can't wait. I can't wait. And on the surface, Matt, you would say, okay, that's true because, they're going to work, the Republicans run the Senate. It'll be their trial and they'll have control over the rulemaking, et cetera, et cetera. Be careful what you wish for. Right.
How do you mean that?
Well, I mean that in the respect that, there's an awful lot of stuff yet to come out. And, if they want to go ahead and they want to subpoena and call Biden and they want to Joe and they want to subpoena and call Hunter, well, then how do you not call, those who would not speak to the Dems?
Well,
you don't get to call one, and at that point you have to say, well, you want to subpoena Schiff, Biden, Hunter? Okay, great. How about Mulvaney, Pompeo, Giuliani, and Bolton?
Look, I mean, I don't put it past McConnell not to do that. I'm sure they can find a way to thwart Democratic witnesses, and it's not exactly analogous, but in the hearings, the Republicans wanted to bring in all these witnesses in the House hearing yesterday.
Yeah, but you've got the Supreme Court guy hanging over all of that, overseeing the trial, and I think that's a little different than having Adam Schiff.
Well, that's true. I mean, let's
not
see
toss
how
that
it plays out. I know
Yeah.
what you mean. It's possible it turns out that way, or it doesn't.
It'll be very interesting to see. I don't think it can be. It'll wind. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm hoping. There might be a little bit more of a dignified situation.
Well, what's the opposite
Roberts.
of a show trial? Jury nullification.
Yeah, I know it's weird. I know it's weird. It's hope springs eternal. So this is where we are. And today, Ms. Pelosi said, we're drafting articles of impeachment. Tell me how you feel at this point. Who's winning the impeachment argument? How do you see this going forward? Where are you on this?
Well, I think Dems have a pretty good public support. I don't know if it's going to grow a lot more or if it just reflects the divisions in the country. I don't really have a good sense of the answer to your question. I'm not dodging it. It's just I don't really know. In general, I think there's a kind of macro argument they're not making, which is that Trump is incapable of distinguishing personal greedy interest from the national interest. This applies not just to Ukraine, but to the emolument stuff and the charities and almost anything else he does, that these really, it's kind of a pathology. There's just no part of him that can make a distinction between what he wants personally and the national interest. And I think there's kind of a larger case even beyond Ukraine that they're not making about his unfitness for office. I think as long as it's mired in the specifics of what he asked for of Ukraine and whether he meant it and whether it was a quid pro quo or not, that's probably helpful to the Republicans. But they need a more forceful narrative, which is that the guy is greedy. He's in it for himself. He doesn't care about you in West Virginia or anyone else. He's just in it for himself, and he can't fight for the country because he's only capable of fighting for himself. I think that's sort of the ideas they want to put in play, but they're not quite able to.
Yeah, and one of the problems with that is that, and this is cynical, but I think that there are a lot of people in America who are just like Trump, and I think the reason he's so successful among that 38 to 40% is those are people who are scroungers just like he is. Maybe for a different reason than he is. I mean, they're at the bottom and they can't get, scrap their way out of the bottom. And all that's left is to scrap, if you will, if that's the right word to use. Versus, and they see him like themselves, only they don't get it. And then they hope that, the fairy gold dust hits them. I think that's what you're up against here. You're up, I lived in that world. I know about those people, and I know just, how defeated they are, and they see no way out. And, anything that, is, a shiny object is.
Except he's just not doing anything for them.
In fact, let's bring up what he is doing. It's Christmas, Scrooge. 750,000 people in America are going to be without food stamps because that's what they're pushing right now. To pay for their $22 trillion debt that they put on us. That breaks my heart because that's so wrong in every sense of the word. And I don't know how that works in Congress, whether he puts it out there and, and Nancy stops it, but that's where he is. That was his big story yesterday, off the impeachment train. And I'm saying, and these people are the ones who vote for him. So I don't even get why he's doing it. And yet they still stick with him. I don't get it. Am I sounding hysterical? I am.
No.
It makes no sense to me.
I understand what you're saying.
Right. Right. So, that's it. I don't know how the Democrats break through that iron wall. Now, you don't in the districts that they're so worried about, those are the very people that are voting, or rushing this through, because those are the Congress people who are up for re-election, in those rural districts or those, half red, half blue districts, purple districts. So there's a story there. It struck me yesterday that nobody jumped on it from the left, and I'm seeing they're very slow. So maybe it'll show up in the next few days as part of the story. But that kind of thing, I mean, why does Trump do that kind of thing? I guess he just figures, well, let's just rip them off of money because I can do it because they don't care, and it's a safe way to make money. Okay, for the Treasury, or their whole Republican ideology. So all right. So while all of that was going on, I'll stop ranting. Okay. Will that make you happy? I can hear the silence.
Right. No. I know what you're saying.
I know when you're like, okay, Al. You were listening to the Halli Casser-Jayne Show. The Halli Casser-Jayne Show posts new podcast Wednesdays, 3 p.m. Eastern at HalliCasser-Jayne.com and is available wherever you listen to your podcasts. Be sure to find us on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and on all your favorite apps. You can find the Halli Casser-Jayne Show on your Alexa device, too. Just say, the Halli Casser-Jayne Show. Oh, and come play with me on Twitter at the Halli CJ Show. Let's go to the NATO summit briefly. I want to go there because, as far as I'm concerned, that was just a joke. First of all, Trump's whole world is money, honey, including the food stamps. Everything is, let's
right.
How do we get money? How do we rip off everybody? So he goes there, and I gotta tell you, I mean, it was not pretty what was going on. And then, of course, that tape gets out, and, they're just making mincemeat of him, Macron and the rest of them, who have absolutely zero respect for him. The man who ran on, I'll get the European to get back respect that Obama lost. Oh, yeah, right. You did that real well. He departed that place like a starving, squealing pig who smells food at the other end of the earth. I mean, that was good. Did you ever? He was upset about that. Oh, my.
Yeah. I mean, it's a piece of his performance at other meetings. You can pick your greatest hits, like when he was all lovey with Putin in Helsinki and wouldn't allow the translator to take notes of the meeting, and, other meetings where he shoved, leaders out of the way. I mean, this was... this was more of the same. And, Macron had sort of had one of the better relationships with Trump, and certainly Boris Johnson did.
I've always thought that he and Macron, I think.
Yeah, they were just laughing at him. And, look, he is kind of buffoonish at these things.
It's really very, very sad. But I put that out there. Let me give you...
I mean, look, if he wins a second term, he's going to really try to pull out of NATO.
I know.
I think
he's going to do everything, because he'll be working for Putin without any problems whatsoever. But you brought something up that I'm glad that you brought up, which is he did have another meeting with the president of Turkey, Mr. Erdogan.
Yes.
Also with nobody there taking notes. Also after this whole horrible Syria thing in Russia. That's also kind of weird, Matt.
Yeah, and again, it gets back to avarice. He's got family business in Turkey.
But that's when he ran. So I don't know if he ran because of the one, the other, or D, all of the above. But he had that summit, and it was almost like he got some word, and he went home in a hurry to fix something. That was my take. That was another take on it.
Yeah, I mean, hard to
say, but it's certainly
hard to say exactly which,
but worth bringing up. Yeah, worth bringing
led him to the tarmac, but
yeah,
leave early. He did
that. He did, or he couldn't stand it because he needed to get home and hear the impeachment stories that were going on. So anyway, so I bring that up because you never know what the heck he's really up to, but he was up to something, and and it's not pretty. So this,
right.
I brought up Putin. Now let's go there for a few minutes because we haven't talked about him in a long time. And I just, how much credence do you into he's running the show here, or this is nuts. But it doesn't look like that Trump is doing anything for the United States anymore. But he certainly is doing the bidding for Russia's cause. Are we crazy? Is this a crazy thing? Are we into like, oh my God, we're all conspiracy theorists, and how dumb is this? But what?
Well, I don't think you have to go there. I mean, one thing he's been consistent about since the 1980s is his disdain for international agreements and feeling the U.S. is getting ripped off by NATO, by Japan, by everybody. So, that's kind of who he is.
But but wait a minute. But okay, that's one side. But I just got to get this in before you respond, which is there's the other side, which is he look what he does in Syria. I mean, he screws the Kurds. He gets the hell out. For God's sakes, Russians walked in and took over our forts.
Yeah, well, he did run on withdrawing troops from places. I don't know.
But he kept the troops there for the oil fields.
Is Putin pulling the strings? I think there are other plausible explanations for Trump's behavior.
Okay, what?
Well, he's an isolationist, that he doesn't want to do these things overseas that there's been a bipartisan consensus for decades, like NATO or peacekeeping roles or other things. He doesn't want to do them. He thinks they're a big ripoff. So, he liked the bombing ISIS part while that was working. But, the other stuff, leaving troops in place for years, that's not his thing. It's not what...
Can I say something that's going to... I'm going to say that the President of the United States has too much damn power.
Well,
I'm sorry.
I don't... the founders did not envision a global empire.
Right.
When they gave the president, all the military
commander
power.
Of, right. But it's a problem. It's a problem.
Yeah, Congress needs to reclaim its role. A 20-year-old authorization of the use of military force that's still being used so many years after 9/11 to justify, operations in East Africa or all over the world is, it's not what Congress is supposed to do.
I thought that was important to bring up. And maybe this impeachment thing is part of Congress taking back some of its power. Another story that I don't think is, or angle that isn't getting enough play, which is this guy has been trying to usurp Congress as an equal, co-equal branch of government. And Nancy Pelosi finally got that and said, if I don't go in and stop this, the next president's going to come in and tell us, screw you. We have to, we're rendered powerless. So I get back to my original statement here, which is the President of the United States has somehow gotten in these times to way too much power. And when you have somebody like a despot, and he is, like Trump, that's not a good thing. And I don't know how you fix this. Even if you get him out, I don't know how you fix this, because then you got characters like this Doug Collins, Matt Gaetz, Jim Jordan, Louis Goober. Okay, I won't call him a name. Gomer. I can't help myself. So I think that's a conversation worth having. So we're going to move on to the election.
Right.
And we're going to move on to Kamala Harris dropping out.
Fare thee well.
What?
Kamala, we hardly knew ye.
That was a bit shocking.
Well, yeah, there was a time when she seemed,
no. Go ahead. I think it's shocking for a different reason than where you're going, but you go and say what you want to say, and then I'm going to tell you why I think it's a bit shocking.
Well, I think the promise of her campaign politically was that she was, broadly acceptable to the left of the party and to the not as left, and that she was an attractive figure and she had a pretty good story, and she captured the energy for a minority nominee, and it was kind of the promise of her campaign, but it fizzled. It failed pretty quickly, I think, over her prevaricating on different policy questions, and maybe, as you said, her somewhat, flippant or even tone at times, or casual tone towards the gravity of the presidency. And for whatever reason, she just never really took off with minority voters. A
friend of mine said to me she was too white.
Well, I think it's some psycho. This is total just, me blowing air. But, I kind of wonder whether her, the group you really want is sort of, African-American women, especially over a certain age when they more reliably vote. And, did her having a white husband at any level affect their thinking about her? I don't know. But it's kind of a
Can
question.
I tell you what my friend said, and who I asked if I could use her name, and she said no, so I won't. But this may sound very crass, but I knew where she's coming from, and she said it was her hair. Her hair, too white hair.
Her straightened hair.
Yeah. Yeah, her whole demeanor comes off as I have darker skin, but I'm really white. And she wasn't the only person. I was actually at a dinner party, and it came up the other night.
Well, that never, But
that's women talking. So.
Well, Obama is half Caucasian. He had enormous success in the African American community.
More forgiving of men. Everybody's more forgiving of men.
I don't know why she didn't gel better with minority voters or voters of any backgrounds.
But you know what upset me? That she had to get out, and the woman who she went toe to toe in the last debate with, Gabbard, remains, and looks like is going to get on the next debate stage. That just blew me away. I would have just stayed.
I think this debate process was
awful, just awful.
They wanted to avoid having, multiple debates on the same evening of top tier candidates and lower tier like the Republicans did last time. And they wanted to get the stage narrowed more quickly.
And they wanted to keep money
the problem
out of it.
is the standards they used. Well, first of all, I don't even think it's a good idea to keep trying to narrow it. But the standards they used to get people off the stage
were crazy.
Left you with the ones who could artificially buy some, financing and poll results. It left you with Tom Steyer,
right,
instead of, Jay Inslee.
And I don't know whether you knew this, but we have to do an in memoriam for Steve Bullock, who dropped out of the race.
Well, I obviously thought of you. It means you two can spend more time together.
And he says he's not going to do the Senate thing, so he's like...
So you two will have a lot more time to spend together?
I guess.
Are you still sitting there in your notebook drawing hearts?
I am. And I'm just...
HCJ plus SB forever.
Halli, and sitting in a tree, KISS. All right. Well, that was a loss for the Dems. I'm sorry. And I don't know what happens to him because he goes back to Montana and I think he becomes a big lawyer.
You still have Michael Bennett, right?
No, God. Oh, my God.
He's still apparently running. I forgot Julian Castro was still running. But he's still running.
Well, and I'll tell you something else. As long as you're bringing up these characters, it strikes me as extraordinary how NBC is trying so hard to help, what's his name from Newark, get his, he's on every other second now. Free publicity. They want to keep him in the race.
Cory Booker.
Thank you, Cory Booker. And I'm like, I never saw any other candidate on the TV screen as much as Cory Booker is being booked on an NBC. Which brings me to something to note that I wanted to say to you, which is this, Matt. The Dems' response to Kamala pulling out was problematic. If you're trying, this is where they always go. She was a black woman. And women of color can't get in there. And everybody who started all the new, well, there's no black people left. And I said, what about Cory Booker? what color skin is. That politically correct thing is problematic to the middle. People just don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear it.
Yeah. I mean, it's really the better argument is that the senators from gigantic states like New York and California
can't do it.
Can't sustain the momentum.
Right.
But, the mayor of South Bend can.
This is but it's because he's gay. It's because
he had to be. I think he had a combo where he needed every element. Gay, veteran, Harvard, Rhodes Scholar.
Obama's team came after him this morning. Goolsbee, Love, they're in like Flint with him.
I think in terms of cast of mind and sort of demeanor, he's the most Obama-like.
Listen, I think he's a very smart guy. Don't misunderstand me. I think he is a very, very bright guy. I just don't think he can get himself elected. Well, we've talked about that, so what's the point of going there?
We've never had a president who's a Vulcan. And I don't know if Americans will vote for a Vulcan.
Don't you ever yell at me for giving anybody a hard time with my names after that. Listen, he's smart, and I told you Trump can make mincemeat at him just the way he looks. That's just what Trump will do. So, I just don't think he's the right man for the job. Now, the sleeper here. Okay, we got Joe Biden, and Joe's hanging in there. We can talk about that. Bloomberg spent enough money already that he's already polling at 7% or 6%, and he hasn't even been on a stage. I mean, money buys. Amy Klobuchar keeps hanging in there.
If anybody's poised for a surge in
we've been saying
January.
that. I went back and listened to the show for the last 6
I know, it's my weekly thing. I just,
I don't see it.
No, we're not there.
No.
I agree.
Yeah. And
but
she's hanging in there for vice president.
I still think somebody who's in the back is going to...
Who?
Is going to move up. I don't know who it is.
I can't imagine who. It's either going to be Biden, as you ask. I think it's going to be Biden or Bloomberg.
Where's Bloomberg? I don't know.
I just said Bloomberg said he spent $6 billion on commercials, which are all over.
Tell me the states he wins to bring 2,000 delegates to Milwaukee.
He'll just buy them. I'll give you this. Just make me your guy.
Well, let's see if he can.
Well, he can. He's got more money than anybody. Thank God.
Yeah, but I mean, I think he can get you on stage as it did with Steyer. I just don't know if you're going to win primaries with it.
Bloomberg is too smart a guy just to do this because.
No, I agree. I don't think he's just being.
Yeah, I mean, he waited a long time. He knows what he can do, and I don't think he would have gotten in if he didn't think he had some kind of leverage to get him to the top, and more than the money. He's got some kind of scheme going on that I think is...
Look, if the first Jewish president turns out to be a New York billionaire media mogul...
If the what? I didn't hear that.
I said if the first Jewish president turns out to be a New York media mogul.
Yeah. Well, we'll be hearing it across the world.
Then it's the most New York race ever.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, it would be extraordinary to have Trump versus Bloomberg. It would be extraordinary if you ask me.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to be having national debates about the Waldman rink,
Well, no, it'd be more than that. I mean, and Bloomberg's got so much on Trump. I mean, it would be interesting.
The Q train.
I just look. It's wide open. I'm not real thrilled. I mean, I love Joe Biden. I do. I think he's a wonderful man. I just I'm on that train now, like everybody else. Can he do it? Is he well enough? Is he smart enough, or not smart enough? Is he astute enough at this point? To be quick and respond. So I'm worried about the Dems. I'll be honest. I'm very, very, very worried. So at that point, you have to have a ticket that Clinton Gore, powerful ticket to pull it off. And who would that be?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, Clinton Gore was the revolutionary act of amplification over diversification. I mean, most tickets had been designed to have a vice president who complimented the head
That
of
was
the
back in the
ticket by
day.
being different.
Right. Back in the day.
You pick someone older, you pick someone from a different region, you pick someone of a slightly different ideological stripes. Those, Clinton Gore threw that on its head with two, 40-somethings from neighboring
Right, but they were
states.
fun. They were fun.
We've kind of gotten back to the other style in recent years. I don't know what the most powerful ticket is.
Who do you see at this point getting it?
I mean, there's going to be a minority on it. I think African American, but maybe Hispanic. There's going to be a woman on it.
No, that just leaves one. There's only one person. Biden yesterday did say he'd entertain.
Oh, he'll
Harris.
pick a woman if he's.
He said he'd entertain Harris.
They're always. I mean, look, there are other minority women, and
you'd have to pull them out of the.
Yeah, you don't have to.
Stacey
pick someone who ran for president. I mean.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't see a lot of strength on the Democratic side. I'm worried. Where I think that Bloomberg, I'm leaning towards him now, only because the guy's tough. He's tough in a way that Trump can never be tough, because he's really tough.
Yeah, and who better to win Wisconsin than somebody who's fighting tobacco, large sodas, and trans fats.
Yeah, but
I can think of no better set of issues to take into.
Yeah, but this guy, he also he knows how to play. Oh, all right, we'll see. But what's your thought? That I keep telling you mine. What's yours? Who you leaning towards?
I'm not leaning towards anyone, but I mean, I think he just is. I don't know what I'm going to do, but he's just not representing the id of the party, which is just not.
The id of the party
into
isn't going to get anybody.
Yeah, it's not
going to get anybody. No, id of the party isn't going to get anybody elected. That's what
I just don't think he's got the. Okay. It's not even. Look, I don't know.
I know.
You're more bullish on him and his chances. I don't know.
I'm really not bullish.
I don't think trans fats and stop and frisk is the way to go. But
I'm not. Well, they would like stop and frisk in Wisconsin, but I'm not. It's not that I'm so bullish from Bloomberg. I'm worried about Biden. That's probably a better way to put it.
You're just going through post-Bullock despair. Okay, you're wailing. You're not thinking straight.
True.
I mean,
true.
In the absence of Bullock,
I'm heartbroken. I'm heartbroken. I'll be the first.
All is lost.
Right. Okay. So,
but again,
yes,
it lets you and Steve spend more time together.
Well, okay. So that's the good part. All right. A couple of things I want to clean up here. One is I want to go to that Barr IG report that U.S. Attorney John Durham has been working on, who comes back and allegedly, because we haven't really seen it yet, I don't think, right? That no intel that Russia pursuit of Trump was a setup, and
right.
and Dirty Barr, and he is freaking out and trying to hold it and rewrite it, do kind of what he did with the Mueller report, and I want to put that out there because watch that. That's going to go either they're going to completely bury the whole thing because there was no there and they're embarrassed, or they're going to turn it into some crazy thing, which I think that's what they're going to do. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, Barr misses no chance to be
right.
Trump's. To make us all miss the stability of Jeff Sessions.
He's been quiet lately. By the way, who else has been quiet? I think who
Mattis. Who else?
No.
I don't know.
Lindsey Graham.
Oh yeah, but we're getting ready for the Senate trial. I mean, that's going to be his moment.
But he has not been going like a madman, crazy.
No, it's true. He's been off camera.
I'm wondering whether he knows something we don't know, or he just went and had too much turkey over Thanksgiving.
Yeah, don't know, but he'll be back.
He'll be back. Oh yeah, he'll be back. Yeah. Hillary did a number on him yesterday on Howard Stern's show. If you haven't seen the clip, do go see it. It's very funny. It's her at her best. I mean, she goes on a tear. Background story: GM has big layoffs. Just put that one out there too.
Yeah,
that's important.
No, absolutely.
Okay, before I bring my closing story in, is there anything that you want to say, or?
No, I think we're
okay. Then I'm going to bring this in because I do think this is important. Barry Weiss had a piece in the New York Times today that everybody should read about the fact that anti-Semitism is so virulent all over the rest of the world, and nobody's saying anything about it. It's, you know, how she writes. She's a wonderful writer. But she's really sounding an alarm, and she's not an alarmist, as to, and this country is not, you know, leading the charge. Like, we need to nip this one in the bud. I say that as I bring up Bibi Netanyahu and the mess that still remains in Israel because they don't have a government, and he's in charge, and he's now been indicted on 900 counts and yada, yada, yada. And I do think that's important, not just because of whatever, you know, you might have, you like, don't, you like Israel's policies, you don't like Israel's policies, but there is a lot of destabilization going on there in the Middle East because of it. And I wanted to bring up that President Rivlin, and they've got that parliamentary system, so, you know, he's a figurehead, but he's got a little power, has decided that if, it's not a done deal, but it's out there, if Bibi confesses to the charges and agrees to resign, he will pardon him. What are your thoughts?
Well, you know, Mike Pence might want to pay attention to that.
It's interesting, isn't it?
Well, yeah. I mean, this is I don't know. I mean, it's looking a little like the Italian parliaments.
I know, right?
70s, you know, where you have like governments every
2 seconds.
I mean, they at least got to have governments every few weeks. This is just stalled out. I mean, as we head towards a third election, and you know, as you've said, Bibi's a survivor. Let's see if he's got one last act.
I hope so. That'd be it, sir.
Okay. Well, stay tuned.
Absolutely. We'll talk soon.
Okay. We'll talk to you next week.
Okay. Bye. Thank you for tuning in to the Halli Casser-Jayne Show, a production of RESEC LLC. The Halli Casser-Jayne Show posts new podcasts Wednesdays, 3 p.m. Eastern, and is available at hallicasserjayne.com and on all your favorite apps. Be sure to visit us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and follow me on Twitter at The Halli CJ Show. Until next time, this is Halli Casser-Jayne.